Some things to talk about before this video really gets going. We're not going to talk about Steph Curry that much because we all know the Warriors are going to re-sign him. So now let's dive into this thing. First and foremost is Chris Paul. Now, I have some concerns about CP3, no doubt, with his early termination option coming up. The big one is he going to decline? He played 60 games this previous season, and when he was in there, he was pretty damn good, no doubt, but he's been in the league for a while now. His age is up there. The injuries, on top of he's not a guy who's ever been really imposing with his athleticism. I mean, the guy only attempted, I think, a little over one shot per game at the basket all of last season or something crazy like that. He's very reliant on his mid-range jumper at this point, and he's making it work. He's still, in my opinion, the third best point guard in the NBA. But, I mean, I don't know. Could there be a real drop-off next season for the guy? Maybe, maybe not. And I do also have some reserved thoughts of whether he could actually want to leave the Clippers. I mean, in one sense, the fact that they've never been able to go to the next level and their cap flexibility and Doc Rivers sucking as a GM does not leave me thinking they can actually get to a championship level. The dude kind of orchestrated the way NBA contracts are made for star players now, with a guy at his age being able to get like a ridiculous max offer, which I think is kind of stupid, but it's the rule, so I could see a lot of reasons for why he'd want to stay, but I've also heard rumors of San Antonio. The thing with the Spurs is they'd have to move a couple of guys, one of them being potentially Tony Parker, and they'd have to let everyone go in free agency, and they could potentially sign those guys back, but it's a big risk for them overall. I saw another rumor of the Houston Rockets. That could be interesting because it could be a second ball handler for James Harden, although I fear that the big hole in the middle of Ryan Anderson defensively could still suck for them. But then again, just Chris Paul and James Harden together could be pretty damn special. And next we're going to talk about Jeff Teague, and I would not have put him on here a week ago because I would have figured that Indiana was definitely going to re-sign him. But now that Paul George wants out, it's a safe bet that someone is going to offer him too much money and Indiana's just going to say, yeah, it's really not worth it. I can see the rationale in keeping him if you want it to be like, let's at least have a competent point guard to help out Miles Turner as he grows into hopefully a great player. But I could also see you just saying, it's not really worth committing that much money. On top of, he might just make us a little too good, so instead of having like one of the best picks in the draft, we would end up having like number 7 or something. So I do expect Jeff Teague to be in a different uniform next season, making $15 to $20 million a season for someone that is not the Indiana Pacers. Next up, we have Jrue Holiday. The thing with Jrue is, he could actually command like a lot of money from the Pelicans, and they'd be pretty much forced to give it to him, because if he goes into free agency and he goes somewhere else, and there have been some rumors, there's been the Dallas Mavericks being one team, and we can always count the Mavericks into being a free agent destination given just the amount of guys they've gotten, and given their situation with Harrison Barnes, Nerlens Noel, the draft pick coming up, could make some sense to have Jrue Holiday in there at the point guard spot. So the Pelicans have to see all this and they gotta go, crap, we're probably gonna have to overpay for this dude, because if he goes, we don't have anything else, because they only have like $12 million in cap space. $12 million ain't gonna get you crap for a starting point guard in today's NBA. So DeMarcus Cousins and Anthony Davis are gonna need that perimeter player who can actually create some offense and be in screen and rolls and hit three-pointers, stretch the floor and all that. But other teams are going to want Jrue as well. He's a valuable two-way point guard. And, I mean, we got to be honest, it's been pretty shaky in New Orleans the past few seasons with, I mean, pretty much everything. They've tried to be a winning team the moment Anthony Davis showed that he could be pretty good. I don't know why they went that route, but they did. Well, I know why. It's because their GM was on the hot seat for about 4 years in a row. I mean, Holiday could just be like, screw it, I'm tired of being in this place, I'm tired of constant player turnover, and I just want to go somewhere that's a bit more stable and has a real direction they want to go in. I mean, I wouldn't blame him. I really wouldn't. If that's the case, New Orleans is pretty much screwed, because then it's Anthony Davis, DeMarcus Cousins, and the worst set of perimeter players in the NBA. So, the Pelicans need him. I could completely understand why he'd want to leave, and there are many teams in the NBA who would love to have the guy. Now, George Hill's situation is very interesting. I think a lot of it is riding on Gordon Hayward. If Hayward decides to stay, I have to assume that the Jazz would then be all in on keeping George Hill, because he's just a really good fit with this team. He took a step up this season when it came to creating his own stuff. He's been an off-ball point guard for a decent chunk of his career. This year he was actually doing more stuff, beating guys off the dribble and stuff like that. His playmaking went down in the process. He only averaged like 4 assists a game. Although to be fair, he's never been that much of a playmaker anyway. But still, what he does defensively and with outside shooting and being someone who can just like be a part of a team really well. I don't know if that was proper English, but whatever. A lot of teams would love to have the guy. And if he, as well as Gordon Hayward, re-signed, then I think Utah could be, one of the better teams in the West. They already were this season with a lot of injury troubles. If they go into next season with George Hill, Gordon Hayward, hopefully a healthy Derek Favors, I'm looking at like a 55, 56 win team right there. When you look at like the step up that Rudy Gobert took this season. But if Gordon Hayward leaves, then I think you probably just let George Hill walk at that point. And then you just, you maybe just embrace a complete rebuild at that point. Maybe not a rebuild. You build through Rudy Gobert, I should say, but I don't know, Hill's situation's interesting. I think similar to Drew Holiday, he's going to be getting a lot of offers. Probably after Drew and Chris Paul and all that. It's just going to be interesting, man, I would not be shocked if he was not in a Jazz jersey next season. It's just going to depend on Gordon Hayward. And now finally, Patty Mills, a guy who I've talked about quite a bit. Probably one of my favorite players in the NBA. 3-point shooting, playing within an offense, floor spacing, pull-up jumpers in the pick and roll, being an opportunistic playmaker. I don't really know what that means. I think it's just, you would never ask him to run your offense, but you're content with him doing it for like 20% of the game. And he's just can be a guy on a good team and just make a real impact for you playing maybe 25 minutes a game. Do the Spurs let him walk, hoping that they could have more money to go for a guy like Chris Paul? I've said it before, if they want CP3, trading Tony Parker might be the way to do it, and I don't know if they want to commit all that to Chris Paul, but look, some team, would they look at how he's helped out San Antonio when he's been on the floor the past couple of seasons and say, we just really need that? Maybe.